Why did some of Hollywood's most dashing young leading men choose wives who were years ahead of them in fame, fortune, and life experience? In an era ruled by studio contracts and image making, these marriages often sprang from a blend of genuine affection, career strategy, and the older partner's insider wisdom. Stick around as we reveal the hidden power moves, scandalous whispers, and timeless love stories that rewrote Tinseltown's rulebook. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's dive into the untold romances behind the silver screen. Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball. When 23-year-old Cuban bandleader Desiderio Arnaz hit the Paramount lot in 1940, he was all conga drum swagger. 30-something Lucille Ball was a savvy studio survivor, nursing bruises from years of B pictures. Their instant spark on the set of Too Many Girls turned into a Vegas elopement 3 months later. Lucy, already labeled too old at 29 for ingenue roles, saw Desi's raw energy as her ticket to reinvention. Desi saw Lucy's comic brilliance, and Columbia's short-term contract pulled the plug on her underused glamour facade. The 6-year gap became their brand. America's first interracial sitcom couple pitched a marriage that thrived on mismatched temperaments and ages. Yet behind the laughter lay brutal touring schedules and Desi's nightclub temptations. By 1950, Lucy leveraged her seniority to demand co-ownership of what would become Desi Productions, Hollywood's first actress-run TV empire. Desi's drumming financed the cameras. Lucy's seasoned timing kept them rolling. Their marriage didn't survive the studio they built, but every rerun of I Love Lucy still hums with the electricity of a younger husband, determined to keep pace with a veteran comedic hurricane, Charles Buddy Rogers and Mary Pickford. Buddy Rogers was Hollywood's golden boy pilot in the silent smash Wings when he met Mary Pickford, the silent era's queen. At 34, Pickford had wealth, Oscars, and United Artists in her pocket. But her first marriage to Douglas Fairbanks was crumbling. Rogers was 22, charming and untested in business. Their 1937 wedding stunned gossip columns. America's one-time little girl with the curls married a man young enough to have been her screen brother. Yet the union proved Pickford's smartest late-career move. Rogers coaxed her back in front of newsreel cameras, steering her toward philanthropy as talkies dimmed silent idols. With Buddy's jazz-era optimism, Mary rehabbed her public image from brittle divorcee to benevolent studio mother, funneling her fortune into the Motion Picture Relief Fund. Off-screen, Rogers surrendered leading man glory to manage Pickford's vast portfolio, even negotiating the 1939 sale of UA stock that kept Pickfair operating through World War II. Their 42-year marriage rebuked ageist Hollywood norms, proving that an aging mogul could mentor and be protected by a younger spouse who understood the changing beat. George Brent and Ruth Chatterton. Irish import George Brent landed in Depression-era Hollywood with rebel Irish war credentials and matinee idol cheekbones, but little clout. Warner Brothers paired him with powerhouse star Ruth Chatterton in 1932's The Rich Are Always With Us. Off-screen, Brent discovered Chatterton, already twice Oscar-nominated and a decade his senior, held a pilot's license, a racing greyhound, and a salary triple his. Their whirlwind courthouse wedding knocked studio PR teams sideways. How could a rising romantic lead admit he'd tied himself to a mature woman, famous for independent heroines? Chatterton's age, however, bought Brent entrance to A-list cocktail circles and a crash course in contract warfare. She coached him on refusing humiliating roles and demanding profit participation, the very leverage that soon saw him opposite Bette Davis in classics like Jezebel. The marriage fizzled after 2 years, undone by Chatterton's Broadway itch and Brent's growing roster of younger co-stars, but its imprint remained. Brent's career blueprint mirrored Ruth's lessons on longevity. Choose parts with backbone and never fear a powerful woman at the controls. Lad and Sue Carroll. When pint-sized ex-carpenter Alan Ladd struggled for extra gigs in 1941, former silent film ingenue turned agent Sue Carroll saw potential the studios dismissed. Ladd, 28, was moody, camera-shy, and a head shorter than most leading men. Carroll, 35, was savvy, connected, and hungry for a client worth her comeback. She became both agent and wife, marrying him in 1942 and masterminding a persona of lethal cool that peaked with "This Gun for Hire." Their age gap fed studio whisper campaigns, mothering jokes and digs at Lad's masculinity, but Carroll turned that narrative inside out. She insisted on low-key lighting to accentuate his ice blue stare, negotiated pistol-heavy publicity stills, and inserted height clauses to keep co-stars on Apple boxes. By 1946, Lad ranked among Paramount's top earners. Trade papers dubbed Carroll the only female Svengali in town. Off-set, she handled scripts, salary rows, and Lad's battles with depression, even producing independent vehicles when the studio system weakened. Lad died young, but Sue Carroll, Tyrone Power, and Annabella. Tyrone Power's matinee smile melted ticket lines, yet in 1938 he met his match in French screen siren Annabella while filming Suez. She was 31, he was 25, and already under studio orders to stay single for fan club fantasies. Their covert nights in Malibu surf led to a 1939 elopement, infuriating 20th Century Fox boss Darryl F. Zanuck, who feared the Europe-savvy Annabella would lure Power into arty pictures. Instead, the actress became his wartime anchor. When Power enlisted as a Marine Corps pilot in 1942, Annabella paused her own career to organize bond tours and adoptive papers for her daughter, whom Power legally claimed as his own. The press painted her as the sophisticated older muse who steadied a Hollywood heartthrob turned combat veteran. Post-war separation and studio-staged affairs fractured the marriage, culminating in a 1948 divorce. But Annabella's influence lingered. Power abandoned lightweight swashbucklers for darker roles in Nightmare Alley, chasing European artistry she'd once championed. Their age gap union briefly rewrote Fox's publicity playbook, proving fans would still swoon for a married idol if the love story looked epic enough. Errol Flynn and Lily Demeita. Before Captain Blood hoisted a cutlass, Errol Flynn was a broke Tasmanian adventurer haunting Paris cafes. There he collided with Lily Demeita, a French star 5 years older whose Hollywood peak had cooled. Demeita imported Flynn to America, married him in 1935, and drilled him in fencing, French etiquette, and the scandalous art of headline making. Warner's signed Flynn weeks later, oblivious that his discoverer slept beside him. Off-camera, Demeita's fiery temper matched Flynn's thirst for bacchanalia. Tabloids dubbed them the boxing glove honeymooners after their public spats. Yet her older world sophistication refined Flynn's rakish charm into box office gold. She even negotiated his first profit-sharing deal. The marriage imploded in 1942 amid infidelity suits, but Demeita secured a record $300,000 settlement and a lifetime of residuals. Another first for an actress once dismissed as washed up. Flynn's legend of outlaw romance owed as much to Demeita's tutoring as to his own myth-making, proving an older partner could script a younger man's stardom and still walk away with the final cut. Log in or sign up to view. Yule Briner and Virginia Gilmore. Long before bald heads became sexy, 23-year-old Russian-born Yule Briner strummed gypsy songs in Manhattan clubs. Broadway actress Virginia Gilmore, 24, outspoken, already a Life magazine cover girl, heard his baritone and offered stage coaching. Their 1944 marriage joined two restless spirits just as television dawned. Gilmore's industry contacts helped Briner land his first directing gigs at CBS, and ultimately, the role of the imperious king in The King and I. Yet as Briner's star rocketed, Gilmore's audition calls cooled, a reverse trajectory neither expected. Briner acknowledged her pivotal role, crediting Gilmore's older, fearless push for teaching him to command a room. Their union cracked under his relentless touring schedule and affairs, ending in 1960, but not before Gilmore coaxed Briner into shaving his head permanently, an image that defined him forever. In memoirs, Briner conceded that the single-year age gap felt wider. She reached back and pulled me into the future. Clark Gable and Josephine Dillon. Before he became the king of Hollywood, 23-year-old William Clark Gable scrubbed stage floors in Portland stock companies. Standing in the wings was Josephine Dillon, a celebrated acting teacher, divorcee, and 17 years his senior. Dylan spotted raw magnetism hidden beneath Gable's awkward posture and crooked teeth. She financed new dentures, corrected his slouch with books on his head, and drilled Shakespeare into his baritone until it rolled like distant thunder. In 1924, they married quietly and moved to Hollywood, where Dylan coached him through every screen test. Studio scouts whispered that Gable's older wife was a Svengali, but industry insiders knew she was his architect, paying tailors, booking voice lessons, rebranding him as a rugged gentleman instead of a lumberjack extra. Though the marriage unraveled by 1930 as Gable's star outshone her own, Dylan refused alimony, satisfied that her protege had conquered the town. Without the seasoned mentor who gambled her savings on his jawline, MGM might never have unleashed Rhett Butler. Their love story, part romance and part apprenticeship, proved age gaps could forge legends more enduring than vows. Humphrey Bogart and Mayo method. Humphrey Bogart's path to Casablanca cool was paved with sweat and bruises at New York's nautical school and a string of B-list gangster roles. On Broadway, he crossed paths with fiery Oregon-born actress Mayo Method, 6 years older and famed for playing hard-boiled dames. They wed in 1938 after a whirlwind courtship fueled by whiskey and wisecracks. Reporters dubbed them the Battling Bogarts. Fights erupted over scripts, poker losses, or a glance too long at a co-star. Yet their volatile union polished Bogart's public persona. Mayo's stage pedigree urged him to infuse gangster cliches with ironic humor, while her networking nudged Jack Warner to cast him in meteor films like High Sierra. Off-screen, their Hollywood Hills home echoed with breaking glass and reconciliatory serenades. Friends insisted the chaos sharpened Bogey's edge. When Bogart met Lauren Bacall in 1944, the older Mayo became symbolic of an era he was ready to outgrow. Their divorce unlocked the romance that cemented Bogart's legend, but Mayo's tempestuous guidance had already taught him how to weaponize vulnerability, turning a supporting tough guy into cinema's most complicated hero. Robert Taylor and Barbara Stanwyck. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer groomed Robert Taylor as the archetypal, clean-cut leading man, but in 1936 he fell for Barbara Stanwyck, an actress 4 years older who radiated streetwise intellect. Their pairing began as a publicity date arranged by MGM. It evolved into a secret courtship so intense that gossip columnists camped outside Stanwyck's ranch. Studio head Louis B. Mayer feared fans would balk at their age difference, insisting on a long engagement in contracts banning joint photographs. Stanwyck brushed aside the PR traps, coaching Taylor on writing, carpentry, and, most importantly, negotiating script approval. Under her tutelage, he graduated from glossy romances to noir classics like Johnny Eager, where his villainous charm finally caught critics' eyes. She, meanwhile, found emotional stability in motherhood by proxy, teaching Taylor's adopted son horsemanship between takes. The marriage dissolved in 1951, casualties of career schedules and Taylor's right-wing activism, yet both credited the other with deep professional transformations. Stanwyck's fierce independence emboldened Taylor to chase morally gray roles, while his youthful optimism reminded her Hollywood could still be fun, even for a woman once deemed too tough to love. 11. Spencer Tracy and Louise Treadwell. When 25-year-old Spencer Tracy left the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in 1923, he was broke and insecure about his Midwestern accent. Fellow graduate Louise Treadwell, 3 years older, urbane, and already performing on Broadway, believed his stammering urgency could electrify any stage. They married that same year, forming a touring repertory duo that crisscrossed the vaudeville circuit. Louise took charge of finances, taught diction drills during train rides, and later founded a school for the deaf after their son John was diagnosed with hearing loss. While Tracy's meteoric rise at Fox and then MGM soon eclipsed Louise's acting ambitions, her domestic command shielded him from scandal, until Katharine Hepburn entered the picture. Tracy's Catholic guilt and Louise's dignified silence birthed one of Hollywood's most talked-about triangles, but their marriage, never dissolved, grounded the actor's stormy temperament. Industry insiders joked that without Mrs. T, Tracy would have self-destructed by 30. She remained his estate executor after his 1967 death, proving that sometimes the elder partner's strength isn't in applause but in an unbreakable backstage tether. James Mason and Pamela Mason. British heartthrob James Mason was 23 and fresh from Cambridge when he met 27-year-old playwright Pamela Collino on a quota quickie film set in 1935. Pamela, worldly and blunt, spotted his aloof charisma and proposed a radical arrangement. They'd marry, co-author scripts, and share the screen as creative equals. Hollywood smirked, but the Masons bulldozed conventions, co-producing 1949's Lady Possessed, where Pamela wrote herself as a ghost haunting James. She orchestrated their transatlantic leap, negotiating with Mayo for a profit-sharing deal rare for foreign imports. Pamela also masterminded James's distinctive wardrobe, tailored suits 2 shades darker than everyone else's, to accentuate his brooding mystique. Gossip scribes labeled her managing mummy, yet producers praised her steely budgeting that kept movies under cost. Their open marriage and notorious cocktail soirees scandalized 1950s Los Angeles, but the creative union birthed Mason's signature roles in A Star is Born and North by Northwest. When they divorced in 1964, Pamela won the couple's Holmby Hills mansion, fittingly named Mandalay, and Hollywood finally acknowledged that behind Mason's velvet voice stood a slightly older woman who'd written many of his best lines. Dick Powell and Joan Blondell. Song and dance smoothie. Dick Powell reinvented himself as film noir's cynical gumshoe in Murder My Sweet, but first he had to graduate from Busby Berkeley choruses. Enter Joan Blondell, sharp-tongued, 2 years older, and already a Depression-era icon when they co-starred in Gold Diggers of 1933. Powell fell hard for her blue-collar warmth behind the wisecracks, and they married in 1936. At home, Joan coaxed him to trade squeaky tenor numbers for layered dramatic monologues, assigning nightly readings of Chandler and Hammett. She even turned their dining room into a mock detective's office, complete with artificial fog, to help him practice tough guy patter. Warner Brothers balked, fearing musical fans would flee, but Joan leveraged studio friendships to score Powell an audition for Double Indemnity. He lost it to Fred MacMurray, yet the test reel impressed RKO. Their partnership also ventured into savvy real estate flips, securing rental income that freed Powell to gamble on riskier roles. Though they divorced in 1944, Powell later wed June Allison, he never forgot Blondell's advice. Lead with your eyes, not your smile. Her slight seniority had taught him gravitas he'd carry to his final directing gigs at 4-Star Television. George Burns and Gracie Allen. George Burns began as a Tin Pan Alley song plugger, scraping by on vaudeville's bottom rung when he met Gracie Allen in 1923. She was a year older, faster with a punchline, and already headlining with her sisters. Burns begged her to try a double act. She agreed on one condition: he'd feed her straight lines while she played the scatterbrained soulmate. Offstage, Gracie's business acumen far outpaced George's. She insisted on owning their radio scripts, banking syndication fees, and securing a 50-50 split in NBC negotiations, unheard of for a female comedian then. They married in 1926, hiding it for months to maintain single fan appeal. Their age-tilted dynamic allowed Gracie to guide George through showbiz's transitions, from stage to radio, then television, each time recasting his role to spotlight her timing. When Gracie's heart condition ended her performing career in 1958, George, well into his 60s, applied her older and wiser lesson: reinvent or retire. He relaunched himself as a solo philosopher comic, winning an Oscar at 80. Every laugh he drew traced back to the single-year senior who had scripted fair contracts, smarter jokes, and a lifelong punchline. Say goodnight, Gracie. Jerry Lewis and Patty Palmer. When an irrepressible 18-year-old Jerry Lewis took the tiny stage of a New Jersey club in early 1944, he thought he was auditioning for a booking agent. Instead, he bowled over the headliner, Patty Palmer, a 22-year-old Italian-American torch singer, fresh off a national tour with Jimmy Dorsey's orchestra. Patty heard possibility in the lanky kid's manic record miming routine. Jerry heard music in her laugh. 4 months later, on his one night off, he borrowed a tux, bought a dime store ring, and married her at the Hotel Pierre. The age gap was only 4 years, but in wartime show business, that felt like generations. A seasoned band vocalist binding herself to a virtually unknown comic. Patty's motive was clear. She sensed Jerry's raw talent, but, more importantly, his need for ballast. Her poise tempered his volcanic energy, her perfect pitch sharpened his timing, and her steady paychecks fed them, while bookings were scarce. Jerry told friends, "I married my metronome." Through the 1950s, as Martin and Lewis exploded, Patty protected the home front, managing money, nursing him through exhaustion, and birthing 6 children. Eventually, Jerry's relentless work and well-publicized affairs fractured the bond. Patty filed for divorce in 1980 after 36 turbulent years. Yet in later interviews, Lewis admitted that without an older, wiser partner, the kid from Newark would have burned out before he ever got famous. William Holden and Brenda Marshall. When Paramount rushed 22-year-old contract player William Holden on a publicity junket in 1940, they paired him with Brenda Marshall, 3 years older, already a leading lady, and worldly in ways the Illinois newcomer was not. Born Ardies Ankerson in the Philippines, Brenda had survived a youthful marriage, renamed herself, and learned every trick of studio politics. Holden, fresh from radio work in a single starring role, was dazzled. On the 12th of July, 1941, they eloped to Las Vegas and kept the ceremony secret until Luella Parsons broke the story. Friends wondered why a rising star would marry an actress whose popularity was already waning. The answer lay in Brenda's sophistication. She taught Bill how to navigate interviews, curb his shyness, and read scripts shrewdly. During the war, she ran their household near physical rehab hospitals so he could rehabilitate aircrew casualties. Her discipline mirrored the mature women Holden often played opposite on-screen. Fame and location shoots eventually pried them apart. Holden's heavy drinking and Brenda's retreat from acting meant they lived on different continents for stretches. But their 30-year marriage held long enough for him to win an Oscar and become the emblem of understated masculinity she had foreseen. In their divorce decree of 1971, she accepted a modest settlement, saying simply, "I got what mattered most, his confidence." Gregory Peck and Greta Kukkonen. On a cold October afternoon in 1942, 26-year-old Gregory Peck married Greta Kukkonen, a Finnish-born Los Angeles makeup artist 5 years his senior. He was a struggling stage actor about to ship off on a USO tour. She was a naturalized citizen who had hustled through beauty school during the Depression and already owned 2 rental bungalows. Greta's calm, pragmatic nature appealed to Peck, who was given to lofty ideals but uncertain prospects. She typed his audition letters, drilled him on diction, and sold one of her properties to bankroll their move to Hollywood when Hitchcock and Wyler came calling. As Peck's fame skyrocketed after 1944, Greta moved their growing family to Brentwood and insisted the children treat their father's Oscar nights like any other bedtime story. Her maturity grounded the actor's conscience. He credited Greta for nudging him toward Gentleman's Agreement and To Kill a Mockingbird, roles that matched his moral compass. The marriage unraveled after a decade of separations and Peck's admitted affair with Ingrid Bergman. They divorced amicably on New Year's Eve 1955, sharing custody of 3 sons. Years later, Peck called Greta the first audience who ever believed my lines and kept a photograph of her in his study until his death. Lawrence Harvey and Margaret Leighton. Lithuanian-born Lawrence Harvey was 29 going on eternity when he wed 35-year-old stage diva Margaret Leighton off Gibraltar in 1957. Harvey had clawed from a displaced person camp to London stardom, but yearned for legitimacy. Leighton, twice nominated for a Tony, possessed it in spades. She first noticed him in Stratford. All cheekbones and restless ambition, she told companions. Their romance was Shakespearean, nocturnal rehearsals, furious arguments about verse, then champagne at the Ivy. Colleagues scoffed that Harvey married up for connections, but Leighton confided to Noel Coward that she loved his dangerous appetite. She introduced him to director John Schlesinger, brokered meetings at the Old Vic, and coached his northern accent until Room at the Top made him an international sensation. The intense mentorship-turned-marriage burned bright and brief. Harvey's affairs and Leighton's own career demands led to a 1961 divorce. Yet both admitted later the union was transformative. He gained gravitas, she found renewed passion playing against younger leads. When Harvey died in 1973, Leighton sent a single note to the funeral home. I taught him iambic pentameter. He taught me to risk everything for a scene. Norman Lloyd and Peggy Lloyd. Broadway's 1935 rehearsal rooms crackled with radical ideas, but few collaborations endured like that of 22-year-old Norman Lloyd and 23-year-old Peggy Craven. Peggy, already an acclaimed ingenue under her stage surname, joined Wells's Mercury troupe as Norman's scene partner in Crime, a play about social injustice. Their onstage chemistry spilled into life, and on 29th of June 1936, they married between matinees. Though only a year apart, Peggy was the seasoned headliner, Norman the eager understudy. She taught him vocal economy, he built sets to please her perfectionism. Moving to Hollywood during the war, Peggy switched to directing so Norman could act in Saboteur and later produce Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Their long marriage utterly confounded the gossip columns because there was no scandal, only morning tennis, mutual script edits, and a nightly ritual of reading Shakespeare aloud. Peggy claims she robbed the cradle, but Norman said her extra year made her forever my senior producer. They stayed devoted until Peggy's death in 2011. Norman, then 96, placed her stage manager's stopwatch on his desk and lived to 106, still crediting her timing for every entrance he ever made. Anthony Quinn and Catherine DeMille. When 22-year-old Anthony Quinn, the Mexican-born boxer-turned-bit player, met 26-year-old actress Catherine DeMille at a Paramount charity gala in 1937, he saw a radiant rebel. She, the adopted daughter of epic director Cecil B. DeMille, saw raw hunger that mirrored her own. Their elopement that October rocked studio politics, an overachieving outsider wedding Hollywood royalty 4 years his senior. For Quinn, the strategic upside was obvious. Marrying into the DeMille dynasty opened casting doors and, more subtly, legitimized a brown-skinned actor in an industry wary of ethnic leading men. For Catherine, Quinn's earthy magnetism countered a sheltered upbringing and promised a life away from her father's shadow. She championed his fight for complex roles, urged him to study sculpting to channel aggression, and bore 5 children while Quinn's career vaulted from supporting toughs to Oscar-winning artisan in Viva Zapata. But fiery temperaments and Quinn's infidelities strained the marriage. The drowning of their toddler Christopher in 1941 deepened the fissures. They divorced in 1965, yet Quinn often acknowledged that Catherine's seniority and pedigree taught me to carve my own Mount Rushmore. DeMille, until her death in 1995, kept the surname and a bronze bust Quinn sculpted during their happiest season, a testament to a union where age difference was the least dramatic element.